From misused to a potential defensive player of the year candidate in a year with no frontrunner, one player might have played himself into an end-of-year award. We got all that and much more on today's episode of the Peacock Williamson NFL Show.
NFL analyst Brian Peacock and former NFL scout Matt Williamson bring you expert NFL analysis every day in less than 30 minutes. Get an inside look at the NFL on the field and in the front office with elite breakdowns to next-level analysis and in-depth information only for the real NFL fans. This is Peacock and Williamson, and it starts now.
What's going on, everybody, and welcome into another episode of the Peacock and Williamson NFL Show. We are your hosts, Matt Williamson at Williamson NFL, former NFL scout, myself, Ross Jackson at Ross Jackson, NOLA NFL expert here on the Locked On Podcast Network, filling in for Brian Peacock, who's out again today. We'll give you an update on that here in just a bit, but let us tell you what's coming up on the show today. First, on today's episode, we're going to be taking a look at some of your questions that you sent in to Matt and I over on the wonderful world of social media. We'll be taking a look at what head coach positions could be opening up at the end of the year. We're going to dive into what success really looks like for the Atlanta Falcons. Is it playoffs or is it simply Michael Penix Jr.'s play? And we're going to lead everything off with a look at defensive player of the year and one front runner that not a lot of people are talking about or certainly expected by the time that the season was getting underway. We appreciate you very much, whether it's your first time or your next time, for making us your first listen and for being an everydayer here on the show, which is a proud part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day. Today's episode brought to you by friends over at FanDuel. Head over to FanDuel.com today for your chance at $250 in bonus bucks. All you got to do is win your first $5 bet. So, Matt, a couple things that we wanted to dive into here before we get started with the show in earnest. First of all, we want to say Happy New Year to everyone.
Sure.
Obviously, you've noticed that Brian Peacock, BP, has been away from the show here for the past couple of days. That's going to go on for a little while. BP took to social media, gave an update, so we feel comfortable talking about it here as well, that BP's dealing with the loss of his father, who he was very, very close to, called him his hero in his social media post. And so obviously we are here to help Brian make sure that he's got everything that he needs, making sure that he takes the time that he needs with his family, and our condolences go out to him and his family. And of course, Matt, Brian is somebody that you're very close to and have kind of, seen through all of this.
Yeah. And I'm sure some of our viewers more so than listeners would notice that Brian's played a lot of road games lately for our podcast. And 9 out of 10 times for those, it was going to take care of his dad. It was always back and forth between those two residents. And my heart goes out to the Peacock family and BP in particular and his son and everyone involved. So not the greatest, but it's something we all have to deal with, unfortunately, in this world. And, Happy New Year to all our listeners as well. I mean, it's January 1st. I hope everyone was good last night and had a good time. If you can see over my shoulder, my daughter had a little gathering here that hasn't totally been cleaned up. Everything's a little sticky where I usually work and not so great. And, I plan on, when we're done here, just kind of chilling and watching college playoffs all day too. So there's a lot going on. Yeah. And unfortunately, some bad stuff in your hometown, buddy. I hope you and all your friends are okay too.
Yeah, absolutely. I appreciate that a lot, Matt. Yeah, I'm doing okay. Everybody I've checked in on has been all right. For those of you that don't know, there are some tragic events, what's being called the terrorist attack, actually, here in the city of New Orleans that took place on Bourbon Street at around 4 a.m. This morning. And look, here's what I will say. New Orleans is a beautiful and energetic city, and it's also a city of resilience and perseverance. We've seen it over and over again in this city. I myself am a Hurricane Katrina survivor. We've seen this city come from the ashes over and over again, and this will be just an unfortunate but another example of the perseverance of the city of New Orleans and ideally the resilience of the people that were affected as well. Our hearts go out to Brian, to all the people that were affected in New Orleans, whether directly or indirectly, because you don't actually have to have been there to be impacted by this type of a situation and everything. So just a tumultuous 48 hours or so, for 92 hours or so, but all onward and upward from here. So our love goes out to everybody.
Let's hope the rest of 2025 goes a little smoother than the last 24 hours or so.
Yeah, not the greatest start, but I'll tell you what, we'll bounce back. So as we turn our attention back to football here, thank you for giving us a moment to kind of highlight some of the other important, off the field things that are going on. But to get back on the field here, we wanted to come in and do a mailbag in this episode and answer some questions. And one of the biggest questions that we got, Matt, and from several different people, was around who we think defensive player of the year is this year in the NFL. And it's just a year with no real front runner, it feels like. Am I wrong in saying that, or is that your assessment as well?
Very much so. And you're from New Orleans.
Very much so I'm wrong, or very much
very much so you're right. I think that there is nobody that's distinguished themselves. I mean,
yeah.
So I'll get this out of the way. I'm from Pittsburgh, and TJ Watt's been the thick of this thing now for the last couple of years, of course. Now, I have said, even on my radio show that is Steelers.com, I think Myles Garrett is the best defensive player walking the planet right now.
Yeah.
And I'll be honest. There's been times I've kind of feared walking to my car late at night and at the radio station, or turning it on in fear it might go up. People more hated in my hometown than Garrett. How can you possibly think anyone on the planet is better than Watt? Let alone that guy. I hate him, blah, blah, blah. So, I mean, it's a fraction. I mean, Bosa, Micah, Parsons, Watt, and Garrett are the elite edge rushers, in my opinion. And if you put them in any order, I would understand. I think Garrett's the freakiest and the best defensive player on the planet right now. But I don't think he's defensive player of the year. And I thought Watt deserved it last year. Watt had better numbers, and Watt had a better year. Now, that doesn't matter, though. Frankly, I don't think Watt deserves it, though. I'm sure people are like, well, I'm sure you're going to say TJ Watt then. He's been phenomenal, but his numbers aren't staggering.
Right.
He's been playing with injury the last couple of weeks, and it shows. And to be very honest, Ross, I bet when all the players put in their ballots for the team awards, the Cam Hayward wins Defensive Player of the Year.
Oh, interesting.
Better year. Yeah, I mean, so if you're not even the Defensive Player of the Year on your team, I can't give it to you.
That's a great call.
Yeah, I mean, Cam's had the better season, and he's beloved, and he's the team captain. But he's going to win the award within the walls of the building. So how can I give it to TJ? You know what I mean? And Garrett's been great, but his numbers don't blow you away, and they're a bad team. I mean, I'm always going to hold that against. I have a hard time giving a major award to a bad team or an average defense. I mean, if they were holding every team to 9 points and they're losing games 13-9, okay. I mean, but they haven't been competitive all year.
Yeah, it's tough to
do
roll
some
with
other
that.
candidates, though.
Yeah, and I do think we're so used to these conversations centering around guys like Micah Parsons, and but obviously he's been dealing with injury all season. Bosa's been on and off, and so have the San Francisco 49ers. They've been up and down as well. But I think that we both have our eye on one potential candidate that at least deserves some conversation. I will say to Myles Garrett real quick, leads the NFL in sacks right now with 14, leads the NFL in tackles for a loss with 21. So if you're looking for a disruptive guy at a premier position, Garrett checks those boxes, right? And he's got the name, all those other things. So that could be the case, but you got an under the radar guy that we might want to discuss for a sec?
Yeah, and even all the advanced metrics, a bunch of pass rushers have Garrett number one, pressure rate and all that type of thing, PFF grade, whatever, which I respect. I mean, and he's phenomenal. I mean, there's no doubt about that. I just want to throw out Parsons' name just because he has no chance to win it, but he's almost like the opposite of Hutchinson. Like from the point that the season started until Hutchinson got hurt, I thought he was Defensive Player of the Year.
Yeah,
From the point Parsons got back from injury until right this second, I think he's been Defensive Player of the Year. But it's just not enough sample size. I mean, we're talking like 5-6 games apiece.
Right.
My vote would be for Patrick Surtain. I think he's been the best player on one of the best defenses that often has to go against. I mean, he went against Brock Bowers. I mean, he goes against Jamar Chase. I mean, everybody. He's my vote. But the name, especially with your New Orleans ties, I think we have to talk about is Zack Baun. I mean, I think I still think Fred Warner's the best linebacker on the planet, but I think Zack Baun's been the best linebacker in the NFL this year on a great defense.
I think I'd have to say that too. And look, we'll chat a little bit more about Zack Baun here in a sec, because I think that the reason why Zack Baun should be considered is not just about what he's done, but what he's come from and the way that he just kind of like popped off on the map. So let's take a look at that coming up next. We'll dive into that as we continue on our conversation around the Defensive Player of the Year. And we're going to get to Michael's question as well around what success looks like for the Atlanta Falcons. Let's get to that next as we continue on with the Peacock Williamson NFL Show, part of Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day. Today's episode of the Peacock Williamson NFL Show brought to you by our friends over at FanDuel, America's #1 sportsbook, who right now, apropos our conversation, have Pat Surtain as the #1 top odds getter at the moment. Actually, I have him at -230 at the moment. TJ Watt follows at +19, +190, and then you get into a big group of +2000s that include guys like Myles Garrett, Andrew Van Ginkel, and Kirby Joseph. So there's your group when it comes to the top. So kind of just like what Matt and I were talking about, but anybody that you feel good about, you can go and check out and grab those odds. Zack Baun +10,000 right now when it comes to FanDuel. So you can go and check that out over on FanDuel today. And of course, if you're a new customer, you put $5 down on a heavy favorite. There were a lot of them this weekend. You can walk away with $250 in bonus bets by simply winning your first $5 bet. So go ahead and check out FanDuel today at FanDuel.com. That's FanDuel.com for your chance at $250 in bonus bets. Make every moment more with FanDuel, the official sportsbook partner of the NFL. All right, everybody, continuing on with the Peacock and Williamson NFL Show. Matt, you and I were discussing Zack Baun, Philadelphia Eagles linebacker, as somebody that maybe should receive a little bit more of the conversation here, or could receive a little bit more of the conversation here when it comes to Defensive Player of the Year. One of the reasons why I'm so happy to hear that is because when he was here in New Orleans, he was just completely misused.
Yeah.
The Saints did everything they could to turn him into an off-ball linebacker because they saw him do it at the Senior Bowl for a little bit. And this is a guy that came into the NFL, got drafted out of Wisconsin after a 12.5 sack season. And so turning him into an off-ball linebacker as opposed to an on-ball linebacker, allowing him to be a little bit more of a run stopper, pass rusher, Sam linebacker type, was something that really limited what he was able to do throughout his rookie contract. Goes to Philly, which we said was a perfect fit for him right away. And then now look at him. The guy has been balling out all season, has been one of the best linebackers in the league, and is somebody that I agree with you, I think deserves some conversation in the Defensive Player of the Year conversation. Even if he doesn't win it, he's a guy that deserves a vote or two.
100%. I mean, at a minimum, I think he's an easy all-pro. I mean, I'm not talking about Pro Bowl. I'm talking about all-pro, second-level defender, linebacker, not the TJ Watts that get called linebackers at times. Right, but I mean, the guys that back the line or play the Sam, like you said. He's phenomenal. I mean, and speaking of Watt, Watt, Herbig, a couple of these Wisconsin guys kind of fit that profile. Are they off the ball? I mean, they're super productive. When they came out, people didn't know what to do with them. I mean, people forget TJ was like one of the last picks in the first round. Herbig's been great here in Pittsburgh as a 4th rounder, and Bond didn't go super high, but they're super productive players at Wisconsin that are not easy translatable players to the NFL. But I give the Eagles all the credit in the world for getting the most out of this guy. He does it all.
Yeah, perfect fit for him, allowing him to be a little bit of that hybrid kind of safety slash downhill safety slash second level defender. 151 total tackles in the season, 11 tackles for a loss. He's got himself 3.5 sacks as well as an interception. He has just been all over the place. So I'm with you. I think Pat Surtain's a guy you got to pay attention to in this one for sure. But there are a lot of guys that could potentially, especially with still a week left, maybe do something that convinces a little bit of the conversation back towards them. Time's running out, but still an opportunity out there. Speaking of opportunity out there, the Atlanta Falcons have a big opportunity out ahead of them. If the New Orleans Saints were to beat the Tampa Bay Buccaneers on Sunday and the Falcons beat the Carolina Panthers, the Falcons win the NFC South and head to the playoffs. But our friend Michael, good friend of the show, who always comes in with questions, we appreciate you, Michael, wants to know if that is success for the Atlanta Falcons, or if you would still consider a season short of the playoffs successful based on what they've learned about rookie quarterback Michael Penix Jr.
Yeah, and like most, when they made that draft pick, I was I questioned it a great deal.
Sure.
You just invested in Cousins. But BP and I've talked about this really the last month or so. I have somewhat of a conspiracy theory that
Ooh.
maybe they signed Cousins, and once they got their hands on him and got him in the building, realized he's more damaged goods than we knew. You know what I mean? Like, I mean, it was an odd situation. That would explain it. Now, it doesn't matter what I thought of the pick, to be honest with you. The pick happened, and frankly, if he turns into the next franchise quarterback, it was a wonderful pick. Whether it was first pick in the draft, no matter what.
Yep.
And I will say, in their defense, Cousins blew up and needed to be benched, and I commend them for doing it. I would have done it even earlier.
Yep,
But
that's my only criticism of them.
Me too. What would their season look like if they hadn't drafted Penix, though? It would not be a success. I mean, let's say it's Jared Verse or a really good defensive player. This season would be a mess, and would be saying, boy, it's a wasted year. I don't know about this coaching staff. Where's the next quarterback coming from? And that's not a success to me. And frankly, and I'm not just saying this because of the awful use of timeouts last week, I don't know if this is a good coaching staff or not. You know, I mean, there's some of these teams where it's like, okay, they got their young quarterback, they got their young coach. Texans a year ago. Great. That's the building blocks that everybody strives for. And I'm not even sure if Penix is going to be good. But I think we've seen enough that even if they don't make the playoffs, it's a successful year and a really good jumping off point to what's to come. You know what I mean?
Yeah. I've got to agree with you. I mean, if you gave me either a playoff shot or a shot at a franchise quarterback and told me pick the thing that's going to bring you the most prolonged success, I'm going with the quarterback 100% of the time. I get that going to the playoffs makes you a desirable landing spot for free agents, potential coaching changes, things like that. I get that. To be able to say, look at how successful the team is and be able to build around that. I understand. But if you give me those two options and say, give me what's going to give me the most success or what's going to give you the most success in the long term, I'm going to take the franchise quarterback 10 times out of 10, 11 times out of 10 if I can. And so I think that, to me, I completely agree with you. I think that what constitutes success for the Atlanta Falcons, they could have already proven, which is that they have a good selection here in Michael Penix Jr. And I'll tell you my theory on conspiracy theories. I think everybody should believe in at least one conspiracy theory. And I think the Kirk Cousins disappointed when he arrived in Atlanta conspiracy theory is a pretty solid one, Matt.
Yeah.
Hey, it's a pretty solid one. But yeah, you would have to wonder, though, like, wouldn't that create some question marks around the team's pro scouting, around the team's sort of homework that they did early, right? If that were the case?
Massively. And when they made the Penix Penix pick, okay, you adore the player, but if I'm the owner, I'm like, why did I pay all this money to Cousins then? You know what I mean? Like, you should have known.
Maybe that's what that conversation was in the draft room. Remember that? There was a video of the conversation with Terry Fontenot and the Arthur Blake. It is like, oh, okay, maybe that's what that conversation was.
I just wrote a lot of big check to that guy. You know, I mean, what are we going to do with them? And they thought he'd be better than that, of course.
Yeah,
but,
for sure.
And going back to draft, day, nobody should have been shocked that Penix fell to that far. Everyone knew he was going to be there. It wasn't like, oh my gosh, Caleb Williams fell all the way here. We had to take him. No, I mean, you should have been better prepared and not gone down both avenues. So that is definitely a reflection on the organization. Super quick, just along the Caleb Williams thing. Yeah, if you ask Bears fans, would you rather sneak in the playoffs this year, get hammered in Philadelphia in the first round, or have Caleb Williams be a success? It's an easy one.
Bingo.
Yeah,
great.
Easy
great. One. Yep. Great parallel. And that's exactly the way that Atlanta fans should be looking at this one as well. All right. Coming up next, we're going to get to our final question here. Dan Morgan asked us all about hot seats. We're going to take it a step further and dive into which head coach jobs may be opening by season's end with Black Monday just around the corner. We got that coming up for you next as we continue on with Peacock Williamson NFL Show, part of Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day. Today's episode brought to you by our friends over at Prize Picks. I absolutely love Prize Picks because I'm really bad at daily fantasy otherwise. Like this is where I go to win, is over at Prize Picks, because I love this format. It's not you versus a bunch of mystery lineups that you just kind of have to believe you didn't do better than. Maybe it's a little bit of my trust issues and stuff like that. I'll talk to my therapist about that later. But over at Prize Picks, it's really all about you and your knowledge of your favorite teams, your favorite players, your favorite sports against the house. Prize Picks will take each player that's playing in Sunday games, Saturday games, whatever it might be, and they'll choose a projection for that player based on a certain statistic. So let's say 230.5 passing yards for Jared Goff next Sunday night up against the Minnesota Vikings. All you got to do is choose more or less. Do that for 2 to 6 players. You get at least a couple of those right. You can win up to 1,000 times your money back. Quick withdrawals. You can have your money within minutes as well. I absolutely love Prize Picks. You will too. So we have a special offer for all of our Locked On NFL listeners. Just download the Prize Picks app today and use the code Locked On NFL. You'll get $50 instantly when you play your first $5 lineup. Win or lose, doesn't matter. It's $50 instantly when you play your first $5 lineup with the promo code Locked On NFL. It's over at Prize Picks. Run your game. All right, everybody, wrapping up today's episode of the Peacock Williamson NFL Show here on a beautiful Wednesday. Happy New Year to everybody. Matt, we're taking a look at new beginnings potentially for other teams. So here's what we know. We know that the New York Jets, are going to be looking for a head coach. I might have foreshadowed myself a little bit there. Excuse me. We know that the New Orleans Saints are going to be looking for a new head coach. And we know that there's some other positions open and things like that, but
Bears,
there are more, the Bears, of course, and there are more that could be opening. So Dan Morgan's question was about what are the 3 coaches that we think are on the hot seat, and Matt, we had some trouble with this one because we think it's going to be far more than 3 positions that could open up. It's not enough, so we want to take this a step further. Who's another team that you could see a head coach position opening up for?
All right, hang with me. I was just going to go division by division real quick. I think in the AFC East, the Jets are done. That's a gone.
Yeah.
Boom. Yep. And frankly, I think we could get to 8 or 9 possibly, which is a quarter of the league.
Yeah.
I think Miami's safe. Stop me if you disagree with any. Do you think Miami's safe? I would say so probably for one more year. Yep. I would run it back. But if it goes like this again, then his seat gets hot. I have to think the Patriots are safe for at least another season. Okay. The Bengals are probably safe if they don't get to playoffs. I assume they're not going to make a change. Mm-hmm. You would think the Browns are safe. Stefanski's won Coach of the Year twice.
Yeah.
But what's interesting, I don't either. But the only thing I want to throw out there is I've heard some rumblings because they're in such a bad spot that they might trade him to one of these coach-needy teams and like a Sean Payton kind of move. Like you'd probably get a second. You wouldn't get multiple firsts.
Right.
And the reason is Mike Vrabel's in the building. He's employed by the Browns.
True.
So you could even bump Vrabel, fire Stefanski, not the most patient organization in the history of the league, by the way.
Very true.
They fired me after a year. I don't think I was the problem, but fair enough. But I think they're probably safe. I just wanted to throw that avenue out there. Houston's fine. The Colts, to me, are 50-50.
Yeah, it's an interesting one. I liked your assessment of them in yesterday's episode. If you didn't catch yesterday's episode, make sure you go check it out. Matt did a great breakdown of the kind of the culture of the Indianapolis Colts. But I like your approach of maybe try addressing the defense first and then kind of have another year with Steichen and see where things go.
I think that's how it'll go. Jacksonville's a goner.
Yeah, I think that's a big one. Yeah, with you.
And I think it's a very desirable job.
Agreed.
I think Tennessee's safe, but not overwhelming. I think they're safe.
Is there a stigma that comes with a team if they do the one and done thing at head coach?
I think so, especially when you're not an established. I mean, Tennessee also has reasonably new leadership above them. You know what I mean? It's not a stable organization that can afford the mulligan. You know what I mean? So I think you're right about that. And then to finish up the AFC, the Raiders are the only one in the West. The other 3 coaches are super strong.
Yeah. Yeah. And you think that Raiders gig could open up? That wasn't, I don't know why I made that past tense. Because that feels like one to me because they've already shown that they'll do the one and done, right? They've done that before. And this is a bit of a different situation because it's not one and done. It's like 1.5 and done, right? Because of the interim position. So I'm with you on that. I think Vegas could definitely open up. And then you get the Brady factor and all that. Tom Brady being a part of that group that would be making the hiring decision. Maybe there's some competition for Vrabel there. Maybe there's a little bit of a pivot for Bill Belichick with UNC in that conversation too. So that's a really, really interesting one to watch.
100%. And I bet that one opens up.
Yeah.
Let's go to the NFC. Eagles and Commanders are super safe.
Mm-hmm.
I think McCarthy is above a 50% chance to return for Dallas.
Mm-hmm.
You on that same page?
Yeah, I'll be honest with you, I think if McCarthy goes anywhere else, it's because McCarthy chooses to go somewhere else. Like he might take the opportunity or get the opportunity to go out. There's been some reports that he might get a chance to see what's available and everything like that. And then maybe he ends up making a decision to either ask for, maybe this could be another head coach trade conversation for Dallas, or it could be a situation to where, he just wants out and wants to go to another situation. That's tough. We don't see that very often in the NFL, but I feel like if McCarthy goes out, he's a part of that equation. He's not just fired outright.
Yeah. So even
if it's behind closed doors, you know what I mean?
Are we in agreement that he is a head coach somewhere next year?
Yeah, I would agree with that.
Okay. That's a good way to put it, I think. Yeah. Okay. I think the Giants are cooked. 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 They were just so bad for so long. You can't just explain it that Daniel Jones wasn't good enough. They were an embarrassment for much of the year. Cooked.
Yeah. Yep.
North, the top 3 teams are super solid. They all win, multiple or double-digit games. Bears are getting replaced.
Yeah, we already know that one's open.
Know that one. The South, Falcons, I think, have to be safe. Tampa's definitely safe. Saints are gone. Carolina's safe. They're fine. I think Carolina's great.
Yep. I think we know what that division looks like.
The West, I think, is very safe, but does McVay retire or something?
I know.
Something weird like that.
The annual conversation around Sean McVay is going to happen all over again, right?
Yeah. And I'm not going to bring, I will bring this up to BP at some point, but I don't think Kyle Shanahan's in the slightest bit, obviously, danger. But this year, if you look at his coaching record, isn't as good as his reputation is. This is going to be the 4th time he's lost double-digit games. I just need to throw that out. He's been a head coach 8 years. Half of the time he's lost double-digit games. Yep. I'm just saying it could heat up a little bit.
Oh, for sure. And I believe this is the second time after a Super Bowl appearance that he's lost double-digit games. Yeah. And so his record following the Super Bowl, like the Super Bowl hangover record for him, not great.
Really
not
real
great
for them, yeah. Mm-hmm. He's 70-61.
Yeah.
I think that would shock people, right?
Him. Yeah, you wouldn't expect that from him at all.
Right.
Huh. Interesting.
He has I'm looking at it now. He's got 3 seasons where they won 6 games. He's got one where they won 4. Now he's got 2 13s, a 12, and a 10 too, and playoff appearances too. But half of your seasons are double-digit losses can't be ignored. Yeah, and it's not like they don't have talent.
Yeah, good point. Yeah.
So that gives 8.
Us. Yeah, that gives us. With Dallas kind of being a hanging one there, it gives us the Jets, the Saints, the Bears, the Jags, the Raiders, the Giants, and then maybe on Dallas. A little bit of a maybe on Dallas.
Maybe on Dallas. Okay.
And so, yeah, it's a good amount of jobs that are open. And look, there's still also the maybe on the Rams, because every year we
there could be a weird one.
The McVay one. There's always sort of that weird job that you don't expect to open up that opens up sometimes too. So
Colts could be that 8th one, or something like that.
Right.
Volatile ownership, something like that.
Tennessee, like you were mentioning earlier, maybe they get froggy. Maybe they decide, like, you know what, we're going to use we're new here to do something that's out of the ordinary, and then end up making that move. But
or their favorite candidate calls them and be like, "I'd love to be the head coach." Oh, okay, I didn't know you were available and interested. Right. Yeah, we'll make the move. I'm betting there's 8. That's a quarter of the league.
Yeah, that's wild. And then you look at the candidates who are out there, solid candidates in this year's coaching search as well, especially if you're willing to go the first time head coach route, which you kind of have to be in coaching searches anyway. And so this could be really entertaining. It will be a very entertaining offseason. But yeah. So Dan, great question. We just needed to take it a step further because, man, it's more than 3. It's definitely
more than 3. 3 seats are on fire. You're talking about who's the hottest seats. 3 of them are on fire. They're infernos.
No doubt. Well, we appreciate you very much for joining us for another episode of Peacock and Williamson NFL Show. Please take a moment to reach out to Brian if you have the chance as well, at BD Peacock on Twitter. He shared his story, so you can go and respond directly to him. And of course, once again, we hope that you have a happy new year. Love, thoughts, prayers to the people of New Orleans as well. We thank you very much for being here with us. And Matt, thank you, man, for being willing to jump on today and keep the ball rolling. as we continue.
Thank you. You're the substitute teacher. Much appreciated.
No problem at all. Thank you very much, as always, y'all. On behalf of Matt Williamson, I am Ross Jackson. We thank you for making us your first listen and for being an everydayer here on the show. Make sure you go and check out Locked On NFL, Locked On Dynasty Football, Locked On Fantasy Football, Locked On NFL Draft. We have you covered from every angle here on the Locked On Podcast Network. We'll see you again here soon as a part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day.